Good evening on World News Tonight. Fatal shooting. 10 people are reported dead, including the suspected shooter, and 25 injured after a killer opened fire at a remote high school in Western Canada. Diplomatic frustrations. Trump is expressing frustration over delays in Japan's promised investments under a bilateral trade deal. Miraculous save. A medical worker miraculously saved his own life after choking on the food he was eating.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Prithika Sivakumar.
Good evening and thank you for joining World News Tonight on Derana News Channel. Tonight, we begin with updates of what is marked as Canada's worst mass shootings. A mass shooting at a high school in Tumbler Bridge, British Columbia has left at least 10 people dead, including the suspected shooter. Authorities say dozens more were injured as the small community struggles to come to terms with the tragedy.
In a country largely untouched by gun violence, situations like this are unthinkable in Canada.
We are facing an active shooter situation in the town of Tumbler Ridge, the beautiful community, idyllic mountain community.
9 people shot dead in the town of Tumbler Ridge in the province of British Columbia. 6 killed at a local secondary school, 2 others found dead at a nearby home. A 9th victim dying on the way to hospital.
The individual believed to be the shooter was also found deceased from what appears to be a self-inflicted injury.
Police will not identify them or their victims, citing privacy concerns. But an active shooter alert previously described the suspect as a female in a dress with brown hair. The town has a population of just 2,500. Not only small, it's very remote. Around a 1,000-kilometre drive from Vancouver.
This is a devastating and unimaginable tragedy. We can't imagine what the community is going through.
Canada's gun control laws are much stricter than its southern neighbours, so tragedies like this are extremely rare. It's the country's deadliest school shooting in almost 37 years.
But I know it's causing us all to hug our kids a little bit tighter tonight.
Another 25 were injured in this latest shooting. 2 are in a critical condition.
US President Donald Trump is expressing anger over delays in Japan's promised investments under a bilateral trade deal. The reported frustration comes as Tokyo works to finalize large-scale US-bound investments and sends a top trade official to Washington for talks.
U.S. President Donald Trump is reportedly voicing strong dissatisfaction over delays in Japanese investments pledged under last year's trade and tariff agreement. According to a report by Japan's Nikkei newspaper on Tuesday, President Trump has high expectations for Japan's newly elected Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, but is also frustrated that promised investments into the United States have not moved forward as quickly as expected. The report says Washington privately communicated to Tokyo that the president is furious over issues with Japan, even before he publicly expressed support for Takaichi on social media. At the center of the dispute is a pledge by Japan to invest $550 billion in the United States as part of last year's tariff deal. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick reportedly told President Trump that the first round of investment plans would be finalized by the end of 2025. However, the Nikkei reported that the sheer scale of the projects has slowed planning and coordination. The initial target to reach a concrete agreement was the end of January this year, but that deadline was pushed back to the end of this month. President Trump is said to view the delay with suspicion, reportedly claiming that Japan may be intentionally slowing negotiations. Despite the report, Prime Minister Takaichi has reaffirmed that the U.S.-Japan alliance remains strong and unchanged.
Regarding my upcoming meeting with President Trump, we will reaffirm the unshakable unity between Japan and the United States and further advance Japan-U.S. cooperation across a wide range of fields, including diplomacy, the economy, and security.
Tokyo appears to be moving to ease tensions with Japan's economy, trade, and industry minister Ryosei Akazawa, who oversees tariff negotiations, set to visit the United States this week. Kyodo News reports that Akazawa is expected to meet Commerce Secretary Lutnick during the trip, with talks likely to focus on investment timelines and ways to keep the bilateral trade relationship on track.
Russia said that it had taken control of a settlement in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region, while Ukraine reported repelling a number of Russian attacks across multiple fronts on the same day.
Russia says it has taken control of a settlement in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region as fighting continues across multiple fronts. In a statement Tuesday, Russia's defense ministry said its forces struck Ukrainian targets in 139 areas over the past 24 hours. The ministry said the strikes target energy facilities, transport infrastructure, and sites used for assembling and launching long-range drones. Moscow also claimed its air defense system shot down around 100 Ukrainian fixed-wing drones. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian General Staff reported 168 combat engagements along the front lines during the same period. Ukrainian forces say they repelled Russian attacks in several directions. Kyiv added that its air force, missile units and artillery hit 5 concentrational Russian troops and struck a transport infrastructure facility. Ukraine also claimed it shot down nearly 1,200 drones in a significant development. President Volodymyr Zelensky signed a decree allowing people over the age of 60 to serve in the armed forces under the contract during martial law. The one-year renewable contract require medical clearance and approval from unit commanders. The contracts will end if the martial law is lifted. Separately, a Russian strike killed 4 people, including 3 young children, in a town west of Kharkiv. Emergency crews were seen searching through the rubble of a destroyed building and recovering bodies. Fighting across the region shows no sign of easing.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with Special Envoy to U.S. President Donald Trump, Steve Witkoff, and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner in Washington, ahead of his expected meeting with Trump.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met Tuesday in Washington with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner ahead of his expected meeting with President Donald Trump, where the officials discussed regional development and received an update on the first round of negotiations held with Iran last Friday. The talks come as diplomatic efforts continue over Iran's nuclear program and broader regional security concerns. Netanyahu is expected to meet with President Trump at the White House. During the meeting, he is anticipated to press for any potential U.S.-Iran agreement to include restrictions on Tehran's missile program. The discussions underscore ongoing coordination between Washington and Jerusalem as negotiations with Iran move forward.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. The US and Canada say they will resolve a dispute over the Gordie Howe International Bridge after President Trump threatened to block its opening amid wider trade tensions, and Michigan leaders warning a delay could bring major economic consequences.
Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney said his country and the United States would work out a dispute over a multi-billion-dollar bridge from Michigan to Ontario. US President Donald Trump has threatened to bar the new bridge from opening in his latest salvo against Canada over trade. However, Carney told reporters Tuesday the situation will be settled hours after he had spoken with Trump. The president taking aim at the bridge is part of a broader trade fight with Canada. In threatening to shut it down, Trump cited Canada's financing of the project, trade disputes over alcohol and dairy, and Canada's trade talks with China. The new Gordie Howe Bridge is set to open in the coming months. It was financed by Canada because the U.S. refused to pay for it. The cost will be financed by tolls over 30 years. Trump has incorrectly suggested the bridge would be owned by Canada, even though the bridge is jointly owned. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said earlier Tuesday the deal as it stood was not acceptable.
This is just another example of President Trump putting America's interests first. And so he made that very clear in his call with Prime Minister Carney earlier today.
Carney says Trump is incorrect in claiming Canada will own the bridge outright, noting ownership is shared between Michigan and Canada. Also on Tuesday, the New York Times reported that U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick met billionaire Matt Maroon hours before Trump's post about the Gordie Howe Bridge. Maroon's family owns a rival bridge connecting Detroit and the Canadian city of Windsor. Michigan business leaders have warned that blocking the project would have tremendous consequences. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has already designated the bridge as an official port of entry, saying it would reduce congestion and save travelers more than $12 million a year.
A student died during protest over unpaid financial aid at Senegal's top university in Dhaka, as weeks of unrest over delayed stipends escalated into clashes with security forces.
Senegal's top university announced on Tuesday that it would be closed until further notice after a student died during protests over unpaid financial aid. Demonstrations at Cheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar began in early December and escalated on Monday as students and security forces clashed. Footage verified by Reuters showed students scrambling to escape flames and smoke engulfing the building, with some falling to the ground. The government said on Monday that second-year dental surgery student Abdoulaye Ba died during the clashes and that an investigation had been launched. A student association president said Ba suffered fatal head trauma and severe blood loss. They added that Ba was not participating in the protests, but was assaulted by police who entered students' rooms before taking him to a nearby student welfare office. Police in Dakar did not respond to a request for comment. I was in my room when the explosion started. Because of the tear gas, I had to go outside, and that's when I saw a heavy police presence, as if we were at war, this student says. And this student called himself a victim and said officers, quote, brutalized him in his dorm. A government statement described Ba's death as a result of injuries sustained during, quote, serious events on campus, but did not give further details. In a joint statement, rights groups, including Amnesty International, condemned what they called the disproportionate use of force by police.
Tropical storm Gisani killed at least 9 people and injured 19 in Madagascar after battering the Indian Ocean islands nation's east coast.
Tropical storm Gisani has killed at least 9 people and injured 19 after striking Madagascar's east coast. The National Bureau for Risk and Disaster Management said the storm made landfall near the port city of Tomasina on Tuesday, bringing heavy rain, strong winds and rising sea levels. Authorities said nearly 1,400 people were moved as a precaution in the Tomasina 2 districts ahead of the storm's arrival. In Tomasina, streets were submerged by floodwaters, homes collapsed, roofs were torn off buildings and widespread power outages were reported. Schools across the Atsinanana region were closed and emergency shelters were prepared as the storm approached. By Wednesday, Gisani has weakened to a moderate tropical storm with average winds of around 80 kilometers per hour. Madagascar's meteorological service said the system was moving west at about 22 kilometers per hour. President Colonel Michael Randriana visited affected areas Wednesday morning, where debris still littered the streets and floodwaters continue to flow. Madagascar is frequently hit by tropical systems during the cyclone season. Last year, tropical cyclone Gamane killed at least 18 people and displaced thousands more. Authorities continue to assess the damage as recovery efforts get underway.
Cambodia has closed almost 200 scam centers in a crackdown on transnational fraud in recent weeks, with authorities providing rare access to one center in a bid to show they are tackling the sophisticated operations targeting people across the globe.
Cambodia has shut down nearly 200 scam centers in recent weeks as part of a major crackdown on transnational fraud. That is according to a senior government official. The official said 173 senior crime figures linked to the centers had been arrested and 11,000 workers were deported in a campaign that started late last year. The push followed a U.S. indictment and then China's extradition of a China-born alleged scam kingpin, the strongest international move so far against the criminal networks. Thousands of scam workers, including trafficking victims held in harsh conditions, have recently fled the compounds with the hopes of returning home. Amnesty International has called this a humanitarian crisis. Reuters gained access to this compound in Cambodia's Kampot province and saw rooms of computers, scripts on how to target Thai victims, phone booths, and the fake emblem of an Indian police station. Authorities said there were no arrests made inside the complex. Workers fled after the alleged boss of the compound was detained. Police said they did not have the manpower to detain those leaving. Cambodia has long downplayed scam compounds, and past crackdowns have done little to slow their spread. Officials say the latest campaign is broader in scope, with a focus on closing sites and detaining senior figures. A week ago, Thai officials hosted a media visit to see a separate compound in Cambodian territory that Thai troops bombed and occupied during a border conflict in December. There, Reuters found similar materials such as fake police stations from different countries.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more world news. Welcome back. Around 380 extras stormed the stadium during this year's Super Bowl halftime show, dressed as stalks of sugarcane and blades of grass in a visually striking performance alongside Bad Bunny.
It's the Sugarcane Brigade. 380 extras hitting the stadium with Bad Bunny dressed as stalks of sugarcane and blades of grass blew everyone away at the Super Bowl halftime show. Morgan Benson is one of the Sugarcane Brigade, now speaking out. She's a 29-year-old model and actress from Minnesota.
You definitely feel like you're wearing a 45-pound costume after being in it for 5 hours.
33-year-old Andrew Atheus, a digital marketing manager, flew across the country from Philadelphia to become Sugarcane after answering an ad for cast members.
We were told not to move, not to dance, and it's very hard when you're listening to Bad Bunny's music for 15 minutes straight to stand perfectly still. And I thought I was doing a great job at that until I saw the final video and there's a sky pan over and I see myself like shimmying a little bit. I was like, oh no, they caught me shimmying.
This is what it looked like from their point of view.
A routine snack break nearly turned deadly for a medical worker in southern Turkey, as he suddenly clutched his throat while eating alone in an office. Luckily, he knew his way out of this tomb.
A Turkish medical worker may have seen his life flash before his eyes during what should have been a routine snack break. The frightening incident happened in southern Turkey and was caught on a surveillance camera. Ilyas was sitting at a table in an office having some food. He was by himself. But the scene took a terrifying turn. Ilyas appeared to be struggling. He put his hands to his throat. He was choking on a piece of food. His airway was obstructed, and he was unable to breathe. As a healthcare worker, he knew what to do next. He stood up and moved to the rear of the chair in which he had just been sitting. Then he positioned himself over the back of the chair and slammed his gut against the hard surface, a kind of self-Heimlich maneuver. He did it again and again, hoping to dislodge the obstruction. At first, it didn't seem to be working, but then, finally, success. The food shot out, and Ilyas was able to breathe again. He paused and brought his hand to his head. The healthcare worker had saved a life, his own.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes of seeing you again, I'm Prithika Sivakumar, and we leave you tonight with the visuals of Ralph Lauren debuting its Fall 2026 collection. Do share your feedback with us via email at feedback.adncenglish@derana.lk or on WhatsApp at 076-805-7933. Thank you for watching World News Tonight on Other Derana News Channel. Have a good night.